Hi everyone, welcome to Screenwalks. My name is Marco Demutis, I'm digital curator at Fotomuseum Winterthur. Screenwalks is a collaborative program by Fotomuseum Winterthur in Switzerland and the Photographers Gallery in London, with the support of Pro Helvetia. Screenwalks is a series of fortnightly online streams led by artists, curators, and researchers who perform guided explorations of the spaces where their core practice takes place. The series was born in April 2020 as a joint effort by both photography institutions to continue our investigation of the image in its digital and networked form. Every event takes a different form that might sit between a performance, a lecture, a workshop, and a conversation. Each walk on the screens of our guests can be a meditative stroll, a sprint, a hike, and in some cases, a marathon. So far, we have seen practices and explorations that took us to online marketplaces, virtual worlds, social media, dating platforms, computer games, 3D modeling programs, CCTV cameras, face filters, meme, and many other places. Make sure to check out the archive of our previous events on screenwalks.com. Now, if you're joining us on Zoom, your microphone should be muted. If not, please go ahead and mute it. This event is being recorded and will be archived. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your camera. The stream will last around an hour and a half. There will be a Q&A after the first part of our event, but feel free to send your questions to John or me privately or in the public chat in Zoom or Twitch. Finally, after the Q&A, there will be a performance, so make sure to stay and enjoy that with us.
Hello, my name is John Uriarte. I'm curator of digital programs at the Photographers Gallery in London. Tonight, we will be looking into the relationship between copyright and the digital image, focusing on the tension that the new notions of ownership and authorship have with the old notions of intellectual and property laws. Since digital culture and the internet took over photographic production, circulation, and mass copying and remixing has become extremely accessible, changing the core practices of the visual culture. The current generations of artists working with digital images have naturally integrated appropriation, transformation, and recontextualization as a key process of their self-expression, creating not only a cultural value, but also an economic one out of it. Meanwhile, the copyright owners and lawmakers fail to recognize the distributed nature of the network images and their potential economic surplus based on updated laws that limit the free access and circulation of information. At the same time, most of the artists, and honestly, most of the human beings and even machines, fail to understand the jargon and complexities of copyright laws, working in a limbo of ignorance about how copyright affects their work. The rapid development of technologies of the network image and the increasing pressure to monetize its massive amounts of data is currently increasing the tensions between creative production and copyright even further. In order to engage with these tensions and maybe suggest new ways of engaging with copyright for artists and right holders, we are very excited to have Antonio Roberts tonight with us. Antonio is based in Birmingham. His artwork uses glitch art, hacking, and technology-driven processes to explore issues surrounding open source software, free culture, and collaborative practices. Antonio has been using creative strategies to subvert the copyright regime in his work, both as an artist and as a curator. He has been part of the open source community for many years, actively engaging on a distributed and collaborative way of working with his peers. As a performer and visual artist, his work has been featured at galleries and festivals, including Data Beat Me in Arles, in France, Glitch Moment Hums at Farderfield Gallery in London, Loud Tate, Code at Tate Britain, Glitch Chicago at the Ukrainian Institute of Modern Art in Chicago, in the US, Permission Taken at Birmingham Open Media and University of Birmingham, and Common Property at Jerwood Visual Art in London. He has also created exhibitions and projects, including the Birmingham editions of Bring Your Own Beamer, Microchip 3, Stealth, and No Copyright Infringement Intended. He has been an artist advisor for Jerwood Arts from 2014 to 2019, and he was curator at Vivid Projects, where he produced the Black Hole Club Artist Development Program. Antonio, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here with us tonight on ScreenWorks. We are very happy to have you. And yeah, the screen is yours.
Cool. Thank you for that introduction. Thanks for having me here, everyone, and thanks for all the people attending. That's quite a lot of people that are in attendance. It looks like there's 92 participants so far. Kind of daunting, but let's go with it anyway. So yeah, so as mentioned, my name is Antonio Roberts and I'm an artist and curator based in Birmingham. And in this talk today, it will be about 45 to 50 minutes. I'm just going to take you on a journey from my practice, explore its technical themes and conceptual themes, and give you a little bit of a preview of some upcoming work. So let me show my screen. There's a slight presentation feel to it, but also there's probably going to be some moments where things might break. Right. Here we go. So as mentioned, like my practice is very much largely situated with discussions around copyright. And to do that today, well, to start this discussion, I first want to give you a little bit of context of what copyright is. Firstly, this is my website, hellocatfood.com. Feel free to go visit it should you wish to do so. So just a very brief discussion about what copyright is. Funnily enough, I've actually already done a talk about copyright and copyleft for the Photographers Gallery, so I won't do too much of an in-depth thing here. Feel free to go see more information about that, and I've also done other talks. But basically, a very brief definition of what copyright is. It's the right that you have to deny or allow people to use or reuse your work. It's automatic. As soon as you put pen to paper, or pixel on screens and save it, then you own your image. You don't need to put the copyright logo on your artwork, and you don't need to register with a government body in order for it to have copyright status. This is in most countries or most places. I'm sure the law varies from place to place, but basically, it's yours and you own it. And I first started kind of becoming involved or interested in copyright through my use of open source software. So from 2008, I wrote a blog post here. I started exclusively using open source software, and the reason for that was because after graduating from studying kind of multimedia design, I was like, I want to keep using the Adobe stuff, but I don't want to really pay for it, and I couldn't afford to pay for it. I also had this moral dilemma where I was like, well, if I pirate it, then I'm a thief. And so I just kind of started using open source software exclusively. Probably some of you already know some open source software and have maybe used it. For example, the Blender 3D modeling program, or maybe Inkscape. There's various things out there for you to use, and yeah, I liked using them. And yeah, so it sort of solved this, I guess, moral dilemma to an extent. And it did require some retraining, but now 12 years, 11 years, actually, no, 13 years on, I'm now more comfortable with the software that I use, and I'm able to make art easily without any issues. Through this, I also became interested in free culture and copyleft. So copyleft being this logo that you see here, the backwards C, pointing to the left, not to the right, copyleft. And basically, this is concerned with allowing culture to be free. That is, especially when it comes to digital culture. There are a set of licenses, like these Creative Commons licenses, which you might have come across, which basically allow you to give a person the rights to share their images online freely and allow others to use them and reuse them, but as long as there's certain conditions met, usually attribution, and that you also allow people to share. When a person remixes it, they also have to share it freely as well, stuff like that. And so this was early on in my practice that I was really getting into open source and free culture, and I had this vision of a utopic future, a utopia, where basically everyone's going to be using open source software, remixing, and there'll be never any trouble with copyright. No one's ever going to get sued again, and it's all going to be rosy and just amazing. But the world is not like that, and I soon learned that there are loads of things that need to change in order for this to be a reality, in order for this utopia, or even, not even going to say utopia, but in order for things to change around the idea of ownership and copyright. And that will be the law and the copyright laws, the public's interpretations of the law, the technology that we're using, and the concept of ownership in itself, and especially when you bring technology into that equation. So what I'm going to be talking about today is my responses to all of those questions, the kind of gray areas, the misunderstandings, and I will just highlight this in a few of the artworks that I've made and a couple of the curatorial projects that I've done. So let's start. It's not really going to be very linear, but I am going to try and start from like a beginning of some sorts. So the first thing I will show you is the copyright atrophy project that I did in 2012. So I know it's quite a noisy page. It's meant to be. I like it being noisy. But basically what this is doing is it's taking logos from lots of different companies, and it's breaking them down over time. In fact, if I just go to the archive page, then you'll be able to see each one a bit more clearly. And it's taking the logos, breaking them over time. The idea behind this artwork, hey, look at that, page isn't loading. Let's try reloading it again. Okay, I'll wait for it to load. I'm sure it's going to load. But the idea behind this artwork is that I wanted to break down an image, keep doing it to the point where it basically loses its copyright status. This is based on, okay, it doesn't look like it's going to load, so I'm going to go back to the original page. Yeah, so there's this idea that I see floating around quite often that if you change an artwork 5 times, then you can use it in your own work, or if you change it X times. And, you know, it's kind of false, but I still wanted to explore this in this artwork. Like, you know, you can see here, what about if I just click on that? Yeah, there you go. I'll just use this one. So, you know, with this, the Visa logo, like, at what point does it stop becoming that and become just something new? Is it here? Is it there? Now it's just a bunch of shapes. So, you know, there's over 100 of these animated GIFs on this page. And eventually I'm going to be making a video of these where like a big old collage. This is just a little preview of that. Hopefully you can see that. Actually, wait. Let me make it do it this way. So this is like a 2-minute long video so far. All of these logos just disintegrating. This is one of those projects I've been trying to do for like the last 2 years, where it's going to have like a soundtrack of all these jingles and everything, but I've just not done it yet. One day. But yeah, so that's the project from 2012 that I did, called Copyright Atrophy. And just fast forwarding the video, you see now they just shards, and it's like, are they still their original logos, or is it just something I can reuse now and use in my own works? Haven't been sued for that, haven't been taken to court or anything like that, which is fortunate for me. So yeah, so that's one of the artworks that I have done. And this kind of idea of exploring this gray area is something that I've done a lot of. And one of the next artworks, which I'll show you, is 2 artworks that focus on Disney. This one being the transformative use artwork, which I was commissioned to make for an exhibition at Jowood Arts in 2016. And the concept of this work and the other work, which I'll show you, is more to take aim at Disney, because if anyone knows anything about Disney and copyright, it's that they're massive copyright, well, trolls, offenders, I don't know, culprits. They have lobbied so much to get copyright working more in their favor. And they're doing it also like to favor those with large intellectual property portfolios. So think publishers of like, you know, music and books, literature. They do it to usually favor themselves. So what you see here is just a few like pictures. It was an installation on a wall along with a projection. And what you're seeing in the negative space, you know, where you can see these kind of modified Disney characters, is a projection, what is it? Not a projection, sorry. Yeah, it's a projection of a remixed version of Steamboat Willie, which was the first video to feature Mickey Mouse back in 1928. By now, under like whatever law, it should have gone out of copyright. That is entered the public domain and be allowed for you to use freely. It should have entered the public domain in 2003, but because of the 1998 Copyright Extension Term Act, sometimes called the Mickey Mouse law, it's now been pushed back to 2023. And so only 2 years to go until Mickey Mouse can be used in theory, but I'm sure Disney will lobby for that to change. And I'll just quickly show you, like, this is what that video looked like. It's a bit, you can't really tell what it is at the moment. So this is just like it with the mask applied. And yeah, it's meant to look very glitchy. I'm sure, yeah, there's only little bits here where you can almost see part of the video, but still it's kind of like taking that video, remixing it and exploring this gray area of when is it Disney, when is it not. Yeah, it's 15 minutes long, so I won't play all of it. Yeah, so that's that work. And the next work, which also uses similar methodology, is from 2019, and it's called Sticker Book, and it was an exhibition that took place at the Herbert Gallery in 2019, a gallery in Coventry. And with this exhibition and these works, I'm doing a similar thing, taking different parts of these Disney characters and kind of, excuse me, kind of jumbling them around to the point where they're somewhat recognizable, but not completely recognizable by their individual elements, but not as a whole. And yeah, like, how many of these can you recognize? Usually if I'm in person, I'd ask people to shout out, who's this? But I know we're on Zoom right now, but this one, I'll just say who they are. So this one is a sticker of Zazu from the Lion King. Here we have, you know, kind of Donald Duck. This one's a tough one. Most people don't get this one. Again, I'm not going to ask you for contributions, but this one was Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. So, you know, and it's just like, so this work is called a Sticker Book, and you know, it's still like taking these objects and making the case for remixing, for saying that I'm not trying to necessarily like plagiarize Disney here. I'm trying to remix and be inspired by them, because of course, I think most of us here on this earth have grown up watching some form of Disney cartoons. And so it's kind of obvious, especially if we're doing any sort of visual art, that might somehow become part, like we might be inspired by it in some way, whether that be the style, the stories that are being told, even though it weren't their stories originally, but you know, just something about it. So it's kind of obvious, but then it's also quite sinister that they're still, it's still a large corporation who will sue the heck out of you. Not me, not yet. Sure, one day, but not yet. So yeah, so those are kind of like two works that use sort of glitch methodology and concepts to explore that. But what I'm going to talk about next, which is I guess the most in-depth thing, and it's the most technical, is the artwork which is on the side of the screen, the side of this room. This is the exhibition at Sherwood, the installation. These three screens here, well, there's actually four, there's one off camera. And these are, believe it or not, these are remixes of songs. And these are remixes of songs which were all involved in, excuse me, directly or indirectly copyright disputes. Yeah, so to explain how these work does take a bit of explaining, and it gets quite technical, which is kind of like how I like to work. I'm quite a technical person. So I will delve into that right now. So when thinking about, the way to think about basically anything on a computer is that everything on a computer is just data. It's just zeros and ones. And sorry, I need to open a piece of software for this. So yeah, when you open up an image or when you double click on any sort of file on your computer, when you are trying to open an image or video, all you're doing is saying to a computer, hey, computer, turn this bunch of data. So here's a song right now. Let's turn this bunch of data into an audio file. Or when you double click on it, you're saying to the computer, hey, interpret this data that I'm seeing here into an image instead. However, with some knowledge, you can trick your computer into opening one type of data, one group of data, and you can trick it into opening that same data in a different piece of software if you want. If anyone's ever done any sort of glitch art before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like you can basically open an image in an audio editor and play it as though it was audio if you wanted to. So yeah, so again, everything on the computer. So this is right now, this is a song, and I'll come back to this song in a moment. But this is the like kind of data representation of it, the bytes, almost like the DNA, if you want to think of it that way, if you're not very familiar with technology. So yeah, and so what I did, because I'm that kind of person, is that in 2012, I created a piece of software which basically turns any data that you give it into a JPEG image. And the way that this works is, I'm just going to paste a link to that in the chat for anyone that wants to read it. The way that this works is in every file, there's what's called the header, and that header tells the computer, again, like everything underneath this header is JPEG data, is image data. So this is the thing that's the header tells the computer, hey, interpret it this way. So what I theorized and was correct in doing is that if you attach a JPEG header to any other data, it will become a JPEG. It was a guess, and it was kind of right. So this is the software that I made. Where are we at? Yeah, so this software is from 2012. I do have a GitHub page which has the software available to you if you want to read it, and so if you want to use it. And what I'm going to do is this. Let's see if this works. I wrote a script for this presentation today. See, hi, I'm Antonio Roberts. And I'm going to try and interpret this text as data. Let's see if it works. Oh, it's been a while since I used this data, so I'm going to select which orientation I want this picture to be at. I'm going to make it a small one. I'm going to open the file, so file, browse my files, Screenwalk, presentation script, and I'm going to press save. Let's see what happens. I don't know if it did it. Yeah, it did. So if I open this file, there it is, right there. And you can see it's actually, no, it's the wrong file, but I think this is one I made earlier. But you can see, like, it's just kind of glitchy. It doesn't, it's not like, it's not as if each word or each letter is a certain pixel, as a certain color. It's just trying its best to interpret that same data as a JPEG. Yeah. And it can also, you can also use the software to just feed it random data. So if I just, again, select an orientation and just feed it random data, and if I press save, it's like, actually, is it going to work? I love live demos. Oh yeah, I forgot to press start again. Okay, so start again, give it a size, random data, and press save. Yay, so there's one here, and if I press save again, it's going to create, oh, did I press start again or did I press save? Nope, it broke. Okay, that's fine, but you get the concept really that I can use this software to basically turn any data into an image. And so what I did with this is I actually turned some songs, the ones that are involved in copyright disputes, into images. So where was I again? So some application studies. And so here is a song converted to a image. And the one that I'm going to focus on today is this image, which is the song I Disappear by Metallica. And the reason I picked this song because of its copyright disputes is that in the year 2000, they made a song called I Disappear, and an early version of it turned up on the file sharing network Napster. Napster is, like the Pirate Bay. It was one of the first ones to be a file sharing website or file sharing service. And, they took it to court and they eventually caused the downfall of Napster. And I believe, I've forgotten a bit because I haven't looked into it for a while, but that also may have triggered like the DMCA thing, which is what we're all living under right now when things are taken down. But if not, I might be incorrect about that. But basically, it was around that time we started thinking about file sharing and copyright. And so this is that same MP3 data, or at least some of it. This MP3 data that you saw here, the same data being interpreted as a JPEG image. And important thing to note is that this isn't like a sort of representation of the audio. It's not as if this part here is the drums and this part here is the vocals. It's not that. It's just basically doing its darndest to try and turn that MP3 data into JPEG data. And again, it looks a bit glitchy, and I kind of like it. So, and yeah, with the concept of these works, I was really, what was it I was trying to do? Yeah, just think about how, it's still the same data. It might not be the same song, but it's like I've taken, if not the score of it, and just played it differently. And actually, that's what I did. I did play these songs. And for that, I basically created some more software. So me being the kind of guy that I am, I like making software and doing things like this. In 2000 and what are we in now? 14, I created some software to do sonification. So sonification is the process by which you turn data into sound. Okay. It was inspired by the Cyborg Foundation. If you know of Neil Harbison, he has a camera which converts, or an implant which converts colors into sound. And I remember visiting them and I was just like, well, can I do something similar? So in this whole blog post, the blog post I'm pasting in the chat for you all to read at another time, I basically created some software, this software right here, which you import an image and it will read every pixel in that image and it will convert the red, the green, and the blue to different oscillators or different sound makers. So, the red will make a sound, the green will make a sound, and the blue will make a sound. And yeah, it sounds terrible. It sounds fairly random. But I just like the sonification process, at least as an exploration of like how to interpret data. So what I did then is I took this image, which remember before this image was an MP3. So I turned the MP3 into an image, and now using some more software, I turn that image into some audio. And I'm going to play the audio in a second. I'll give you a warning, only because it is really loud and there's lots of flashing images. Okay, so that's just your warning. So first, I want you to tell it to share computer sound. And I'm going to open it. You won't see it just yet, and I'll give you a warning. Hold on. Yeah, so for the next, it's not being played just yet. For the next 15 seconds, if flashing images is a thing that affects you, please do not look. So 3, 2, 1, now. Hopefully you can hear the sound. I'm not hearing any nods. Yeah, cool. I'll fast forward a bit. Yeah, Metallica remixed. Yeah. It's a great remix. Love it. So, and the point I'm making here of this artwork is that I guess it's still the same data. It's still the same MP3, just gone through several different processes. And yeah, conceptually, I'm sure Metallica's lawyers won't ever come knocking on my door going, "You've remixed I Disappear, how dare you," lawsuit. But it's thinking about how, you know, what the sort of sampling and remixing culture, which can just take parts of a song and make them something new, yet they can still be getting into trouble with that. And so I'm pushing the limits of this, really, thinking about the limits of this. And what I like about, well, of course I like my work, it's my work, but it's just kind of digital, I'm not gonna say digital activism, but just a digital way of tackling these this copyright issue. Yeah, very complex issue. So the other songs which I used, the 4 videos that I had in this exhibition, if you remember, there was 4. It was, let's start here. So yeah, there's 4. Was Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. At the time, 2000, I think it was 2014, he got into trouble. You know, it's a terrible song, but the copyright implications had, you know, it was wide ranging for the whole industry. So that's Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. Ice Ice Baby, Vanilla Ice, you might remember, he sampled Queen and David Bowie and got into trouble for that. So this is Ice Ice Baby. I Disappeared by Metallica, already discussed that. And then My Sweet Lord by George Harrison of the Beatles, who kind of unknowingly sampled a gospel song and got in trouble for that as well. So, you know, and as I said before, this isn't the whole of the MP3, and it's not in any way sort of like representing necessarily different sections of it, but it's just the JPEG representation, or my JPEG representation of it. Yeah, so there's all the pixels. So those are only, like, I guess, a few works that I've done in this area. I'm going to show one more at the end, but what I'd like to do now is just turn briefly to my curatorial work. So I'm a curator as well, been doing that for like 10 years. And especially in the last few years, since like 2017, I've curated 2 exhibitions about copyright. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the works that are in those exhibitions. Yeah, only briefly. So first, in a non-linear fashion, I'm going to talk about this exhibition called Copy Paste, which is an exhibition that I curated for the Pixel Gallery and Studio Group in Norway in 2020. So I didn't get to go visit it because of this little pandemic we're having, or big pandemic. So, but I got, and I curated it. It had all of these lovely artists in it. And one of the artworks that was in this exhibition, which I was really happy to have, so firstly, here's a couple of pictures of the exhibition setup, how it all looked. Oh, I wish I could have gone to see it. Alas. Yeah, and it was also an online exhibition as well. And one of the artworks that was in the exhibition, which I was really happy to have, it was the artwork Copy Machine by Peter Sund, who you may know as the founder of the Pirate Bay, which is, you know, the file sharing network website, which somehow is still online all those years and all these lawsuits later. And in this artwork, I really love this artwork. It's basically a copyright infringing machine. It's a little Raspberry Pi computer, for those that are in the know, and it just has a Raspberry Pi with a bit of programming and a screen. And what it's doing is it's every minute it's creating 100 copies of the song Crazy by Gnarls Barkley, you know, the hit of that time. And on the screen, it's showing that if the song was being sold for, like, you know, $1.15, it's showing you how much the music industry has lost through the act of copying. So, and I think it was at that price, every day it would cost the music industry $10 million. So, you know, and here it is in the exhibition. And I like it because conceptually, for me, it's making the case that the act of copying in itself doesn't reduce the value of an artwork or reduce the value of something. And in fact, an artwork in its abundance becomes more valuable. The fact that everyone has seen it, has heard it, it becomes more valuable, both, and obviously there's always nuances and exceptions to this, but both in terms of money and cultural value. Because it's more abundant, it's more valuable. So yeah, this artwork, it's just making copies forever and ever. Here's a little video of it in action. A close-up of it, excuse me. Yeah. And you can just kind of see the numbers increasing and how many copies there are of it. So yeah, so that's Copy Machine, which again, I really wish I could have seen it in person, even though it's just a small little computer there. But yeah, so that's one of the, that was, and it kind of reminds me of, at least, yeah, it harks back to what I was talking about with like Metallica, like kind of trying to fight copying. It sort of reminds me of that as well, just the fight against those sorts of, that line of thinking. Yeah, and the second and last artwork from an exhibition that I curated that I'll talk about is from the exhibition that I curated in 2017 called No Copyright Infringement Intended. This exhibition took place at two venues, which was the Phoenix Gallery in Leicester, both in the UK, and Vivid Projects Gallery in Birmingham. And it's what it looked like. So, you know, in this exhibition, it was very much like about like kind of meme culture, well, not necessarily just meme culture, but just how people sharing digitally are coming into conflict with copyright laws. You know, because the copyright laws definitely need to catch up to how we're all working. And so, yeah, you can even see here, if anyone's familiar with the Left Shark meme, there's a left shark. I actually still do have the left. I still do have that one big left shark. It's in my living room. It's massive. So yeah, you know, it's kind of dealing with that. I won't talk about this picture, but the artwork that I want to talk about from this exhibition is the other Nefertiti, an artwork by Yannick Ayanelez and Noor El Badri, who are really amazing artists based in Germany, or German artists based in Germany. And yeah, so this artwork has a history, which I'm still really finding. Well, I only really found out through exploring this artwork. So the original bust, the head of Nefertiti, it's under disputed ownership. I can't remember the name of the museum. Actually, no, I do remember the name of the museum. I just can't pronounce it. It looks like it might be New Museum. It's spelled N-E-U-E-S. But that museum has the bust in their possession, and it was found it was discovered 100 years ago. And there's disputes over whether it was given to the German government or whether it was taken. And those disputes still rage on today. And you know, it's a topic which a lot of museums are having right now, or a lot of people are reaching out to museums to say return stolen objects. So kind of like in protest to this, the artists, and when if you go and try and visit the this in the museum, yeah, there's no photos allowed, lots of guards guarding it. It's just like under heavy surveillance. But what the artist did was to do a 3D scan of this head, of this bust, secretly using an Xbox Connect scanner. So I've got a little video of it from them, and it shows the process of them kind of 3D scanning it. I'll mute it because I'm going to talk over it a bit as well. So you've got the Xbox Connect scanner. Let's turn the volume down. And for those that don't know, the Xbox Connect is like, it's a game controller, and you kind of like just wave your hand in front of it, and you can control the video game using it, because it's like reading your position. But it can also be used for 3D scanning. So you can see Nora there lifting her scarf to do a 3D scan secretly. Now, I will say, of course, like with both the artworks that I've shown, the artists are amazing and have and should talk about their work. I don't want to necessarily talk about it for him. This is more just like about why I include it in the exhibition and, you know, what I think of it. So please do, I encourage you both to go check out Nora and Jan's work. It's amazing, and go to their talks to hear them talk about it. But yeah, so you can see her there doing a 3D scan. You can just about see the Kinect popping out. So with in doing this, there was actually a bit of a discussion about whether, so sorry, this is just more pictures of the work in the exhibition. There were actually discussions around whether that act in itself of 3D scanning was in fact a hoax. Where's nice? Yeah, there it is. Could the Nefertiti scan be a hoax? And does that matter? The reason that these questions are being asked is because if anyone's ever done any sort of 3D scanning before, you know that you need to have very high resolution cameras, and an object needs to be still, and that if you're trying to 3D scan glass, it just doesn't work. And you know, so there's all these questions, and even the 3D scan that they have, like, it's been scanned the top of their head as well. So in order for that scan to have been made using the Kinect scanner, probably would have had to like step on a chair and, you know, 3D scan it from there, and of course you would have been caught. But so it could have been a hoax. It could have been a hoax. And sorry, I forgot to mention, in doing the 3D scan, they released the file online as well for people to download and use them for 3D print. And in a way, it's kind of like liberating it. It's kind of making it available for people to see finally. Yeah, so, and like the question this article, you know, poses, does it matter? I don't think it does matter if it was a hoax, because the museum had already made a 3D scan of the head of Nefertiti, but it was really expensive to gain access to, and you know, they weren't releasing it to anyone. So they clearly see that as value in a digital reproduction of this. And let's remember, you know, this, if you're talking about copyright, this sculpture is in the public domain, or like it's out of copyright. So what they're doing is, with this digital file, they are really kind of like reasserting their ownership over an object, which, you know, if anyone knows anything about colonialism and just the kind of finders keepers mentality of how objects were taken, and you know, there was also a lot of death and war involved, it's just doing that again, but digitally. And that's kind of where my work's going right now. So yeah, I won't talk about this anymore, but my artwork is more thinking about that, because the concept of copyright in itself, there are like, and again, this is more things that I'm researching, but we're very much under American copyright when we think about it, especially like how the services, the internet services we use, YouTube, Twitter, Vimeo, what have you, are all American. So most of the laws that they're under are American laws. And so if we all use their websites, but there have been cultural copyrights. I'm still learning about Chinese copyright, which took ideas of ownership differently. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking about how copyright in itself is something which is very Western and is changing how we think about ownership. So in the work that I'm making now, that's what I'm exploring. And I'll just end with, a little look at some existing and upcoming work. So this is a piece of artwork, or screenshot from an artwork that I made in 2019. This artwork is called Visually Similar, and it was commissioned for an event at the Victoria and Albert Museum called Copy Paste. And in this artwork, what I wanted to do, originally I wasn't necessarily thinking about the colonialist aspects of museums, but I'll get to that in a second. And what I did was, I was taking the 3D scans which they had. You can see here's a 3D scan of bust of a young woman, and the next one, bust of a boy. And what I was trying to do was basically give them a new identity, or invent an identity using images that were visually similar, that were like found using a reverse image search on Google. And so I did that. I did do just that. I found lots of random images, and in the end I was like making these kinds of textures that looked a bit like this and a bit like that, and then put those onto the 3D models. Let's go back here. So it looks a bit like this, and in a way, it's kind of like the process of photogrammetry. Oh, sorry. Everyone can see these images, yes, just to make sure. Like you can see the image of the 3D scan. Sorry, just because I'm watching. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So the process of photogrammetry is basically. Ooh, sorry, 1 second. So I'm seeing in the chat some people can't see what I'm doing. the image of the 3D scan.
We are able to see. I mean, from my side, we can see how you are sharing your screen. So
okay, cool. Just making myself all right. Okay. So yeah. So as I was saying, the process of photogrammetry is basically you take lots of images of an object, and then the software will stitch it all together to make a 3D object. You have to use specific software and everything, but you just walk around something and then you can make a 3D scan. And in finding these random images and stitching it together, I was kind of like trying to recreate it using found imagery. And yeah, it looks a very kind of collage and very rough and slightly glitchy thing. But again, I liked that kind of process. And actually, I'll just show you a bit of the video, like a bit of each video. And I'm nearly done, by the way, only a couple more minutes. So it looks a bit like this. And you can see the collage images which I use kind of morphing in the background. And just a bit of this one. And another reason why I chose these particular models is the names of them. So this one is called Bust of a Boy, and the other one is called Bust of a Young Woman. And it's like they didn't have an identity. They would it was under the identity was unknown, especially for the black boy, because back then, like in the 18th century, let's say the opinion of black people wasn't very good in the we weren't treated very well. Okay, we just weren't treated well at all. So it's like, who is this person? A significant person? Is boy a significant boy? So I chose these images for that reason, to give them a sort of a new identity to construct one. But then, especially within the last year, all the discussions around museums and ownership and copyright, I felt like I was revisiting this, and I was thinking about how, okay, well, the V&A, there's so much wrong with museums and the objects which are in their collections and how they came into ownership. And it's like that. So rather than just looking at it as an object that's like, I'm thinking about the history of them now, and especially the digital recreations. So if you look at this 3D model on this page and you go to the license information, you see it says BYNCSA, and I'll translate that for everyone. Basically, it's a Creative Commons license, which allows it to be shared freely. You can download it, but you can't use it for you can only use it for non-commercial purposes, and you must share, your creations that you make must also be shared under a non-commercial license and allowed to be remixed. And again, it's just like these public domain images, objects, they're now reasserting their ownership over them through the digital means. And again, I feel that's sort of wrong to be doing, especially when you think of like the colonialist nature of museums and background of museums, to be trying to assert ownership over this. It's sort of wrong. And there's an artist whose work is amazing. I know the Photographers Gallery has exhibited her work, but Morrishan Aliari has done a project, Digital Colonialism, which completely addresses this. Only briefly, I'll mention the part of it, but like, you know, just the fact of when you have people 3D scanning objects, it's usually Silicon Valley companies, Western companies going over to places where they consider objects to be in danger, and they're rescuing them or saving them, in I've got air quotes over here, by 3D scanning them. And that really smacks of like just judgment on non-Western cultures, saying that they don't have the right facilities to care for those artifacts. And it smacks of like them saying, well, we're superior to their, our services are superior. And yeah, certainly, like just to end here, it says, you know, the British Museum is the world's largest receiver of stolen goods. And here the director of the V&A has had a lot to say about this, about why he thinks the museums should, like, why the stolen objects, why the best home for them is the UK. And you know, I think it's complete bullshit. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be swearing, but it's all bullshit. His reasonings are terrible. And yeah, and this is also being applied to digital reproductions, it seems, as well. So right now I'm in the process of yeah, just kind of researching different copyright, how people, how other cultures interpret copyright, and have historically and today. And I've made only like a little sketch of a work, and this is our end now after this, and this is just you know, the Easter Island sculptures, and it's similar sort of thing, have it texturing it using found imagery as a way, because it's like the people who originally owned the sculpture now only have an imperfect way of viewing this, and that's through images found on Google, people's holiday photos. You know, that's their experience of their own culture now. Yeah, so this is still just like, it's early work, and I'm hoping to have a solo show of this in the future, I think next year. But that's really where I am. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna stop myself now and just say thank you all for listening and invite questions. Yeah, thanks. Oof.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much, Antonio. This has been great. We have already quite a few questions coming in the
Cool.
chat, so we'll start passing them to you. In the meantime, if you guys want to add more, please feel free to write them in Zoom or in Twitch. We'll try to go between the two and bring the questions to Antonio. I just want to start right off the bat. There's somebody who's very much asking precise questions that pertain more to the legal realm of copyright laws. So there's Mufoleto Vaza, who has asked a few questions about, like, you know, how you make money off someone's other work, or how do you react if somebody makes money off your work, and all of these questions that, I mean, you're free to respond in a second, but I just wanted to maybe encourage people, just because I think these discussions on copyright are important, but when they get stuck on the legality, because I think legally there's never been any satisfactory stance in any country so far that has managed to kind of deal with this idea of culture and the use of culture that we've been doing, even more so about appropriating and sharing, and this idea of ownership of images. So I would just like to ask everyone to think more in terms of, and focus on this idea of like image as a shared culture, and how we deal with, you know, thinking in terms of ownership of images in this case. And I think, just as a counter question to you, maybe from my side, Antonio, I thought that for me, like, breaking down these seemingly clear boundaries between this, you know, like what's an image, what's a sound, and kind of create this constant flux is a provocation that proposes like an idea of a culture that escapes this fixed ownership or claim of something. That I think it's the question is maybe like, how do you see this form that you're creating, which is exactly escaping all of the ways that we've tried to stabilize images and music and forms of cultures in their different ways. I'm speaking also thinking institutionally, how images and photography in the museum had to enter in a very clear form, has to be you know, part of edition systems. It has very clear rules. It's regulated and stabilized.
Whew, there's a question. So yeah, I get, so just so I understand, it's like are you talking about, like, you know, the converting of images to sound, and how does that, like?
Yeah, sorry, I'm going back from the questions that we received at the beginning of the talk. So those were more pertaining the initial examples that you showed.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll have to come back to the last part, only because I want to focus on, I know that you're saying that you don't necessarily want to focus on like the law part of it, because you're right, I'm not a copyright lawyer. I have read a lot about it because, you know, my interest. But and even like I saw one person saying, like, you know, is someone, yeah, no, it's, could you say that's using someone's creative work is also bullshit? And here's what I'm going to say to kind of like really situate where my thinking is with all of, when it comes to kind of remixing and copyright, is that it's the power imbalance, the difference in power between those who exploit and those who create. So for example, when you saw in my works, when I was kind of like remixing works, it was always at large companies, Disney and well, Disney being the big one, the musicians, and in other works, like, it's always been like really people who have a lot of power, right? Because they, and it's been shown time and time again that they seem to feel that because they are a large institution or a big person, I don't know, that they can get away with using the work of people beneath, in air quotes, beneath them, because, you know, that artist isn't very well known, and especially because those people don't have copyright lawyers. Like, if you ever try to hire a lawyer, it's expensive. So, you know, and even though that is the law, that is the law we enter into when we create our works, we don't have the knowledge of copyright, we don't have the lawyers to support us, but they do. So they can bully us, they can intimidate us, and they do that. So whenever I am using other people's works, it's pretty much always, you know, punching up, taking aim at those who are exploiting our work, our creativity. Certainly, if you look through the No Copyright Infringement Intended exhibition, this gets talked about quite a bit. So yeah, so I still like, and if I'm remixing the work of other people, I'm going to say, like, on my level, i.e., you know, not famous artists or anything, we're just like, you know, here doing our practices, whatever, I will seek permission, I'll give them notification, and I do it often out of appreciation, more just like to say, hey, I like what you've done, here's my interpretation of it. And that's why that's what I am doing. So that's where I stand on the whole copyright thing. Yeah, so that's how my interpretation of copyright law is, and how, when I'm remixing and reinterpreting, is more just kind of taking aim at those who are changing copyright for the bad, for the worse, and making it worse for us creators. And yeah, there's of course so much more I can say, so much more I have said in previous talks, but I can't. I could go on forever to say more about that. Yeah. So there was another part to your question. Sorry, wasn't there?
Oh, no, don't worry about it. I mean, I was just interested in how you saw this idea of breaking down something that we consider like a stable format, like what is an image, a static image or a song, into this like fluid, constantly in flux process almost, you know, like.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it, like, of course, okay, the way that I'm doing it in some of these examples is like, you know, taking the raw DNA and just kind of like, you know, primordial soup and just making something new out of it. And, you know, like I remember early on in my practice, I always looked back at even remixing in music, for example, like people who, especially, yeah, rappers, hip hop artists, they were doing some amazing things, taking like a short sample and create it into something completely new, and and yet still obviously facing trouble for just sometimes using half a second, a second. So yeah, and that's kind of like what I'm doing. I'm not going to say I'm making music or anything music, but it's just still this taking little parts of an image or little parts of something and trying to create it into something new. And yeah, I don't know, like I treat everything on a computer as not stable. One, because everything crashes, but two, because we have the tools to modify endlessly and to interpret an image in so many ways. Like we can interpret an image through its pixel values, through its hue values, through I don't know. There's just so many processes in which to gain something out of an image. So it seems for me, it's like the image that I see on screen is not just the image.
I'm going to bring another question that they have sent me through the chat in connection to the last part of your talk, Antonio, where you were talking about the digital colonialism. And there was, Pete was asking if you could talk about the Algo Afrofutures Artist Development Program and how it relates to what you were saying about the museums and colonialism.
Oh, wow. Okay. The Algo Afrofutures program and how it relates to colonialism. Sure. Okay. So I didn't talk about that at all today because this is not part of my practice, but I also make music through programming. It's a process called live coding. And what I'm doing is I've, with a fellow musician, Alex McLean, we're starting an artist development program to basically for Black musicians based in the West Midlands, which is where I'm based, for them to look at incorporating live coding into their practice, exploring how they can do it. And yeah, so one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because I'm a Black male, and when I am doing this live coding, this performing, I'm often, well, nearly all the time, I'm the only Black person there. But if you look back at electronic music, which live coding kind of really is, it has a very long history. It was started from disco and other Black music. Even the 4/4 beat. Oh, you'll forgive me. It's going from my head now. But the 4 to the floor rhythm came out of disco, and that's what we like. Just having a constant beat, and that's kind of like how it goes into electronic music. And a lot of electronic music has its roots, whether that be rhythms from African rhythms, or I don't know, just electronic sampling has its roots there. And yet in electronic music itself, it's very white. It really is. Okay, yes, everyone's going to probably say, oh yeah, what about this DJ? What about that DJ? And so on. But on the stage, Black people are just very underrepresented, despite being here, being inspirational, and having made major contributions to the genre, to this. So yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, I think yeah, it does relate somewhat to what we're talking about today, but more just recognizing the contribution and recognizing the history of a genre or of an art form. So yeah. Whew.
There's a few questions I think that maybe I could try and group. Some people in Twitch are asking about an emerging notion of authorship and how, in your opinion, this is developing the network culture. And maybe someone else on Zoom was talking about asking about collages and how are they, like, when you're creating something, how does that pertain to fair use? And if you could talk about the concept of fair use in appropriation.
Yeah, I think when it comes to again, collage, fair use, it's still going back to what I was saying originally, where it's just like, whose artwork am I using? Am I I know I've heard this term usually in comedy, where, you know, punching up. Am I taking the work of those who, I guess, have more power than me? And, you know, I'm usually, so this is where another thing we need to take into consideration is like, why am I doing it? So usually I'm making these artwork as a piece of critical artwork, like I'm criticizing the regimes under which they're created, I'm criticizing copyright law. I'm not necessarily doing it just to make money. Like, yeah, sure, I definitely, in a lot of instances, I am being commissioned to make these artworks, but it's not just necessarily, like, I wasn't going to mention his name, but I'm going to. Richard Prince, all right? Just going to say that. Is it Prince or Price? I don't really care. But, you know, yeah, it's Prince. But, you know, I am trying to more just, I don't want to just exist within the copyright regimes that we have, the copyright laws that we have, because they are flawed. So in doing this, I'm trying to work in those gray areas and advocate for change. Yes, I'm not, well, I have written to, I have tried writing about this, and when there are law changes, I've made criticisms about it. But, you know, my sonification image, for example, isn't going to suddenly reform copyright overnight. But even if it tries and helps artists to rethink how they're sharing artwork on the internet and how they're creating, then that's still some way to go. And if, as I had said at the beginning, like I had this vision of utopia where everyone's sharing freely and, you know, giving attribution to everyone and there's no issues. It may never go that way, but the further in that direction we can go, I think it's going to be better for us all. Yeah.
And there was someone also, I'm not sure if you know about this because it's quite technical and about the laws, but there was someone also asking about if the same laws apply to screenshots of moving images to use within a collage, for example, when you are creating something new.
Yes, it does.
It's the same.
Quite simply, yeah, it does, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm trying to find the next questions. It's just that there are so many people writing here that sometimes it's difficult. Nathan Jones says, the practice delineates the ages of the regimes really effectively. He says, maybe you can read it on the chat directly, Antonio. I wonder if there's any, if there's some comparison to made with other aspects of law that interest you?
I wonder what you mean, like other aspects of law. Yeah. Yes, again, other laws. Which other laws? Like, there's definitely, you know, thinking, and this is, I'm thinking on the spot here because I've not really thought about it necessarily, but like, yeah, criminal law, the fact that, okay, I haven't really thought about that. Like, how is this crime punishable, basically? The crime of copying, and to what extent, and to who. But no, I haven't necessarily thought about other laws within society necessarily, like directly, not yet, I guess.
Okay, I know that Antonio has had a long day and there's lots of questions in the chat, more than we have time to give, but I would propose that we wrap the Q&A here because we now also have some time for a performance. So I don't want Antonio to die on the keyboard before he has the chance to perform live, which is a very exciting part of tonight's event. Unless you have something that, like I see you looking at the chat, if you want to say some final words to some of the questions that come in, please do. Otherwise, I would like to thank everyone already for engaging so much with Antonio, and I would like to ask everyone to stay and enjoy the live coding performance that we will see in a second. One small favor I want to ask is that if you have a minute after the event, if you could please help us fill a few questions. If you can go to screenworks.com/poll, there are only 8 questions and they will help us understand better where you heard about us and how to improve our series. So for us, it's very important and helps us a lot. If you have a minute, please.
And you have the link on the chat too that we just posted it there. And I'm not sure if you need some time to arrange things.
Yeah,
Antonio, are you
I'm
ready?
going to put my headphones on because it's going to change. But basically, what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to be doing another sonification performance, sort of like what you heard earlier, but I'm using better synthesizers so it doesn't sound like complete leaps and loops. But so I'm just going to do another sonification piece, and I'm going to be using a few different sources of images. Some of them will be what I had before, which is via you know, the picture, the music converted to a JPEG, but some of it will just be probably a bit different. So yeah, I'm hoping this works. If it doesn't, then well, it just doesn't work, does it? So if you give me a second, I'm just going to try and get it set up.
Yeah. Meanwhile, just a short reminder for the audience that we will have another Screenwalk in 2 weeks with Corinne Bionnet. So if you want to join us, there will be a Screenwalk on, I think it's on March 10th. That will be the next one.
Cool. I'll hopefully be there at that one. So I'm just going to share my screen. This is the software that I'm using. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to select an image first. So on the keys, we're going to have I Disappear by Metallica. And let's see if this should work. Okay. Yep, so for this to work, I have to turn off my microphone. So for now, it's a goodbye from me, at least on audio. And if you just let me know if you can hear some synths, give me a thumbs up. All right, so. Whew, okay, hopefully that worked for everyone. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Yeah, so what I was doing there, I had, you can see like the display showing you which pixel is currently being read. And the 4 images that you see there are images that I was using as inputs. I have, yeah, that's the first time I haven't done this performance kind of thing for this software in like, I don't know, like 3 years. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to bring it back. I'm hopefully going to do some proper ones again in the future, like, you know, thinking about, and you can see the images that I use, you know, this one by Richard Prince, this one by Jeff Koons, and the 2 images behind. All of these were kind of involved in copyright cases in some way. So I thought it was interesting to kind of like bring those back. You had Richard Prince on the drums right there. And then Jeff Koons on which one was he using? I think he was on the FM synthesizer. You had Blurred Lines on the bass, and you had Metallica on the keys. So yeah, thank you all for listening to that. Yeah, I was happy to have done it again.
That was amazing. That was great. Thank you so much. And then I enjoyed it quite a lot. And also, like, it was brilliant to use all those images with all these copyright issues behind them to create the song or the live performance. I guess that that's just like a thank you to say. We are wrapping up the event right now. Thank you again to everyone who has joined the event tonight. Again, remind you that we will be back in 2 weeks with Codim Bayonet, and thank you, Antonio, again.